Okay. Well, thank you, everybody, for joining. This is our December 2024 financial wellness webinar. Today, we're going to tackle the topic of caring for an aging loved one. Not exactly directly related to finance in all aspects, but nevertheless important, and I'll explain a little bit more in a second of why we chose to do this topic. Just a couple of administrative issues for those that are not aware. My name is Chris Thomas. My firm is 40W Advisors, and we have the privilege to serve as the retirement plan consultants on your company's 401k plan. We do these monthly webinars every month. And every month we tackle a new topic. We take on topics that we know people are dealing with in their own personal lives. And sometimes they're very much financially related. For instance, in January, we're going to be doing an investment market review, looking back on what happened in the investment markets in 2024 and how that might have impacted your 401k accounts. Again, every month's a different topic, things that we know people have on their mind. If you have any ideas for topics that you would like for us to address, please let us know and we will add them to our list. Before I introduce today's main presenter, let me give you some of those administrative items. Everyone is currently joined in listen-only mode. If you have any questions, feel free to use the questions box that's part of your meeting control panel. I'm going to monitor those throughout to make sure that we either answer your question directly and immediately, or make sure that we get to it at the end. Also, everything we talk about today is for education and informational purposes only. Nothing should be considered specific advice to you. Particularly if you do have specific financial advice, that's stuff that should be addressed with your personal financial advisors and/or tax accountants or attorneys. I say that's a little bit less relevant to today's topic, but it is our standard compliance notice to you all. So let's go ahead and get started. And as I mentioned, we have very fortunate to have a co-presenter here with us today, and that's Fern Pessin. Hello, Fern.
Hi.
Thanks for joining us. So Fern is an author, a caregiving consultant, and somebody that we've made part of our team to help out with some of our personal wealth management clients and their families who are going through a situation where they have someone in their family that is maybe no longer able to care for themselves and needs to have, our clients are dealing with caring for mom and dad or caring for any loved one for that matter. But Fern, your story is an interesting one, so I thought, maybe you can start us off by just telling us a little bit more about, who you are and how you got into this.
Yeah, well, my story is pretty typical. You grow up, you have your parents doing their own thing, and then one day you notice something going on, and you're like, or there's a diagnosis. In my case, my mom is a cancer survivor. My father was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and like many caregivers, I'm the one who doesn't have a job that requires me to be on site. And so it made sense for me to move to Florida, where my parents were snowbirds. We had them move down there full time. I moved down there and my sister and brother stayed in New York, and I became primary caregiver. And that became a full-time job because, everything just sort of happens all at once, and you're like, okay, I don't have time to do all of this stuff. And now it's interesting because when my dad passed away, I was diagnosed with a rare form of eye cancer. So my role went from being primary caregiver to secondary caregiver because we moved mom up to where my sister and brother live in New York, and she moved into assisted living. So they help with the hands-on care, and I still manage remotely all the financial, tax, investment. I just got my mother a new prescription plan for 2025. I do all of that remotely, and a lot of people are caregivers in various degrees of intensity.
Yeah, and it's through this experience that you've written a couple of books on the topic of caregiving to share to share kind of the best practices that you've learned throughout the way.
Well,
And I
people
think
kept
those
asking
books
me,
and
give me a list, give me a list.
right. Well, and
So
that's a good segue. Everybody should know that you do have access to a handout that is a checklist, and we'll talk more about that. But there's a handout that's available to you as part of this as part of this presentation that you can take away, an actionable handout to give you a checklist. And again, we'll refer to that here in a minute. So here's what we're going to just talk about today. We're going to talk about, we broke this down into three sections. One, it's communicating. So we're going to talk about how to have the conversation. It's a difficult conversation, right? To talk about, talk with mom or dad, or maybe to talk to children about the fact that, in a position where care is needed. No one likes the process of being maybe dependent or unable to do things that you were always able to do your whole life. So we'll talk about how to start the conversation. And through that conversation, we'll talk about how you can identify the needs and wants of the person that you're providing care for. And then finally, we'll talk about how to create a team. We've got a limited amount of time here, so we're going to go through this quickly, and that's why I think those handouts are going to be helpful. If you do have any, if you do want to have further conversations, I do think it's, please reach out to us, reach out to Fern directly. And you can have conversations where, to learn more about your specific situation. And, Fern's book's also going to be a great resource that you can, she's willing to provide everybody a free digital copy of the book. And you can also order, copies on Amazon. We'll talk more about that in a bit. Before we get started into these three sections, though, I thought I'd just ask a quick question of those that are joining us today. It's a simple question. It's, where are you right now? What's your current caregiver status? Are you currently a caregiver? Maybe you expect to be a caregiver at some point, in the near future, or you're just interested for yourself or for others. Okay, I'm just going to let some of those continue to roll in. All right, because we're already running a little behind on time, I'll just go ahead and wrap that up. So about 2/3 of the folks online today expect to be a caregiver, and great. So this is going to be interesting. And those that are just interested, oh, I didn't share that. Those that are just interested, great. This information will hopefully be helpful, to you at some point, or you can share with a friend. So let's go ahead and jump into this first section here and just talk about communicating, how to start the conversation. So Fern, why don't you guide us through this?
yeah, so as I described my caregiving, if you are not a current caregiver, then you're not going to tell me whether you're a primary or secondary, but you have an idea of maybe somebody that you're caring for that won't be living right with you, and someone who might be living near you, and somebody who's living further away. So we're going to talk a little bit about all the different ways you can participate. But mostly, if you're not currently caregiving, you might say, why do I need to start now? I don't want to be doing this forever, ever. And my parents, let's say parents, are still independent. Why do I need to start? And the problem is that we never know what's coming. COVID taught us that at any point we could be intubated and not be able to communicate. And this sounds terrible, but when someone dies, it's easier because you can wrap up all their paperwork. But when somebody is still alive, then trying to get access to help them is more challenging. And as people change in their physical well-being, it's more and more things that are coming up. And if you don't understand what your family wants, what their intention is, when they're able to communicate it, then you wind up having higher levels of stress. So
yeah, I think that's it's important, right? Talk early while you're cognitively and physically able to, and you're able to get good feedback and answers from them to questions, so you can clearly understand what's important to them. Situations can devolve quickly.
And yeah, I had a friend who was taking care of her mother, and then her mother and father had passed away. She went to Italy. She decided she was moving there, and she was found a few weeks later on the floor of her bathroom. She has a glioblastoma, so 60 years old. and she can no longer communicate what she wants, and the people that she asked to take care of her that she designated had never had the chance to talk to her about what she wanted. So these are most important, is just for you to support the person you love and wanting to do what they wish. So the conversations are not necessarily about what you need to do right now, but to understand what will be wanted later so that you can be supportive. And some of the ways you can have these conversations without causing fights, and or my mother was, you're not the boss of me,
Right.
things like that. You have to learn how to temper it. So I went through all this so I could help you guys. So the thing is, when we say things like, you should stop driving, it's dangerous, you're going to get hurt, or other things like you need to move, or you need to have help in the house, or things like that. When you come at somebody with that, they're immediately putting up a stop, and they're saying, you're trying to run my life, you're trying to take over, you don't think that I'm still human, all of that. So coming at it from I feel is definitely a different way to do it. My mother wouldn't stop driving, even though she was recommended to stop driving by the test she took, until my dad said, every time you go out at night in the car, I can't sleep, I worry, I'm getting sick about this. And she realized that all of us were getting nervous for her on her behalf. And that's when she stopped driving. So approaching it in a way of how I feel and what I'm worried about helps them understand where it's coming from. I'm not trying to boss you around. I'm trying to keep you well for as long as possible. In the slide that you're seeing right now, this is an AARP article that's like a perfect way to bring up a conversation. I read this article on preparing a digital estate. Have you guys ever considered that kind of a thing? And then you can
Yeah.
bring in someone like Chris, right?
Well, sometimes I think whether you're bringing in a third party, so you're referencing whether it's a professional, a financial professional, an attorney. Hey, they suggested that, maybe we should look into this. Or I read this article and they suggested they should you might want to look into this. I think that to the degree that you can kind of bring a third party in to make, so it's not maybe entirely your idea, kind of remove some of the potentially emotional relationship baggage that can be brought into a conversation. To avoid that issue, like you brought up, Fern, where your mom said, you're not in control of my life. So I think that's where third parties can be helpful, and I think that's one of the reasons why we've added Fern to our team, is that Fern will help our clients have and facilitate conversations with family, maybe siblings that have a different idea of how mom and dad might need to receive care, or siblings that maybe they don't get along necessarily that well, but by having somebody else in the room can kind of help help facilitate and keep everybody, polite and cordial and, and on task. So third parties, I think, are a great way to start the conversation. I think that was a really good suggestion you have there, Fern.
Thanks. So once you decide to have the conversations, you want to do an assessment of where you are, where are your loved ones cognitively, where are they physically, where are they financially, as much as you can help with that. And then you create a plan. It's called a care plan. And people say, but there's nothing wrong, right? She isn't like that. They're not gonna fall. They're not at risk for this. But a lawyer said to me, and I'll never forget it, he said, it never happens until it does. And that's how lawyers get called in last minute. So you want to have the conversations while they're still able and it's not threatening. Well, of course, you're fine right now. That's why we want to start this conversation while you're able to tell what you want. So
Right.
first time for everything, right? And the other way to bring it up is to say, look, we love you, as siblings, we love you, parents, but we can't read your mind, and we will all do it based on what we know, unless you tell us what you want. And this I had a friend who spent $13,000 on a funeral. Only a couple of weeks later, when he was cleaning out his parents' house, he found out they wanted a cremation. His dad wanted a cremation. So he wasted money and he didn't do what his father wished. And he was really upset about that. So you have to find out what people want. So that will reduce your stress and you'll be prepared in advance. If you know somebody prefers to be at home rather than in a hospital when things get worse, then you can prepare to have everything that will be needed in the home, or you can start preparing a home. If you need to have people like caregivers or a chef or somebody to drive, you can get those contacts all lined up and figure out, interview, do all of that before you actually need it. One of the things.
Yeah, I was just going to add there too, Fern. I think that sometimes if you're able to get very specific, wants and desires, from the person that you're providing care for, and I just keep using the idea of parents, right? But when we say parents, we mean it could be any loved one.
Could be spouse.
Exactly. But if you're able to get that feedback from them to clearly understand what they want and they need, when you're working with a care team and maybe working with siblings to try to coordinate to create a care plan for mom or dad, rather than saying, well, I think she wants this, I think she wants this, and then that can create some conflict among those, among siblings or among the care team. But if you can turn to and say, no, this was clearly what, mom and dad said, this is what they said. Remember, we had that conversation. That way, again, it's very clear and it eliminates any potential for conflict.
Yeah. Moving on.
I guess talking about that care team. Once you do understand what's needed and what they want, how are you going to put together the team to deliver that?
Right. And the thing, like I said, my role reversed, right? So I went from taking to the doctors and picking up prescriptions and going to cook for them, all the way to now where I don't do any of that, but I'm still involved. I schedule appointments when needed. I do research. And when my sister and brother were long distance, they helped find the new residence for my parents. So they did all the research, narrowed it down, then I did the on-site thing. So there's lots people can do. I have a friend whose brothers was so busy with the companies, the corporations that they were running, that all they could do was send money. But because they sent money, my friend's mother was able to be in a really great place. So everybody can do something. You don't have to have anybody who's not involved at all. And the other thing is to reduce a lot of stress. I'm a writer, so it's easy for me to write emails and write reports and write up all this stuff. But if you communicate regularly, you can go on vacation. That's what I learned. And Chris, I know this is part of the philosophy of 40W is to give people the time to do the things that they love instead of having to worry about all this stuff. So this is a big thing, is that if you communicate with each other, then nobody doesn't know what's going on, to use a double negative, and they can step in when you get that world trip and you need to step out for a little while to enjoy yourself. So I think that's important. And then moving on, we have lots of ways for you to talk to your family and ask them questions about what it is they want. And then once you know what it is they want, you can build the support team, which we just went through that slide, in the health area, the legal. You don't have to do everything yourself, but you have to have the resources lined up. And then you can assign those responsibilities. So I take care of finance and I take care of investments. My sister takes care of the doctor visits. My brother takes care of all the IT and techs and banking stuff and all of that. So everybody can have a role. And if you don't have somebody that can fill the role, that's where you go to friends and neighbors and organizations and church groups and others to bring in those specialists. And we have the handout that Chris just flashed up that you're going to get has a list of who those people might be that you can bring into the team. And then the family can decide who's monitoring those people, who's going to call them in when they're needed and follow up on what they suggest or like specifically doctors, lawyers, accountants will give you things that need to be done.
Yeah, I tried to bring it up, Fern, in all fairness, but because I'm working off one screen, not multiple monitors today, it kind of fumbled it. So nevertheless, there's a checklist there that will help you, to Fern's point, identify what some of those different needs are and then who those people are that might be able to fill those roles. Is it somebody from within the family or, the extended family or the neighborhood or what have you, or is it professionals you need to go out to get?
Right. And then, on the finance stuff, people say, I don't want to tell my kids what I have or what I don't have. And kids say, my parents won't share with me the information. I can't get that information. I don't know their passwords. I don't know their financials and all of that. So here's the reality. You don't need to know all the details. You need to know where it is so that when you need it, you have it. Chris, do you want to tell them about the resource you have? Can't hear you.
Yes, thank you there. So yeah, so one of the things we found helpful to clients as they, they or their parents maybe, are starting to age and need some more assistance with things is that our client portal, this is an example of what our client portal looks like. It's a place where you can organize and all of financial information in one place. So you can can be given to, mom or dad can give a login, or you can have your own login to this site where you can see all of mom and dad's financial stuff. So you know where the accounts are, you know which banks and which financial institutions you need to reach out to coordinate their affairs. It's also got a vault feature, which is just another place where you can keep secure documents. You can keep copies of will, trust, powers of attorney, medical directives, HIPAA authorizations. You can keep those here so that it's one place where anyone from the family can jump in to get it. So just, wherever the point is having a convenient way to organize and share information can be important when you're going through, this with a loved one. So.
And on the other side of things, that's, where to put the financial, legal, all of the health documents, and that's fantastic. You can also do it if you don't want to do something online, if you prefer to have it physically. There's something called, I think it's called Knockbox, Knockbox. I have no tie into them, but they have pre-done files that you can, I have to put the information in here, and then it's in one box, and that box can somewhere. And shameless plug, in my book, there's worksheets where you can fill in all this information, and then everything is in the one book, and you can put a file attached to it with all the paperwork that you want to collect. And then that book can be put in a safe deposit box. It can be given to a lawyer. It can be put in a home safe. And you just know that anytime somebody gets in a situation where they can't take care of their own things. And these are things like if somebody winds up in a hospital and then they have to go to rehab, who's taking care of the pets? Who's taking care of the house? Who's making sure the bills are paid? Even if there's no mortgage, there could be a community fee or something like that. Like all of these things have to be taken care of, and you don't think of it until you're in it. And then if somebody can't talk, you can't find out how to get all of that. So that's what we're just talking about, honoring people's wishes, helping them. This is 5wishes.org. It's a fantastic nonprofit. For like $5, I think you can download this list of questions. And what I did was bring it to my family. I filled out the answers. They filled out the answers. When we shared them, my mother was, oh, put me down for that too. Yeah, I want a hospital window.
Yeah, right.
I want
Right.
So there are resources out there for you to collect and start having conversations a little at a time while everything is great, so that you won't be so stressed later, because really all you're trying to do is honoring your family, doing what they wish so you're not stressed, and that is the most important thing, so you have an easier life. And that's what we're just trying to help you with. So if you have questions about that, or you have a specific situation, please let me help. Call and I'll give you some advice or some resources. Chris is local to the whole Maryland area. He has specific people in that area if you're from there.
Yeah, and I just to further kind of explain why we did this, our firm, 40W Advisors, our kind of tagline and which kind of what we embody and what we want to deliver to clients is one more time. We want to free up time for people to do the things that they enjoy doing, pursue their passions, be with their families, and then we also want to reduce stress. So more time, less stress is something that we want to help deliver through these educational webinars to, employees of companies that we work with, like you. So this can be, dealing with the idea of caregiving's, it can be very time consuming and very stressful. So what I hope we were able to provide to you today was just kind of an order, like where to start. What should I be thinking about when I want to start this process, or how do I tackle this? It starts with a conversation, having a conversation to get information out of the family, out of the person that you're expect to be providing care for. Understand what they want, understand what they need, document that, again, figure out those needs, figure out what you need to either get outsource or what you need to do within the family, and then assign roles, and that's through creating a team. So start the conversations early, identify the needs, and then create a team. And Fern's book is a phenomenal resource that has just a laundry list of checklists that you can use to, and for yourself and for your family situation. Go ahead, Fern. I know you have something.
Right now, I'm sorry to interrupt, Chris, but right now is holiday time when people are seeing family. It's a great time to maybe start a little bit about, we'd like to get this going, if you will, and can we set up times or gather again, or those kinds of things. And you don't have to do everything all at once. That's overwhelming. But if you do it now, it'll be easier later. I guarantee it.
Yeah, so those of you attending this live, it's December, around the holiday time. So you're able, maybe having gatherings with people. Great time to start these conversations. So good point, Fern. So thank you for joining us today. Just want to make note, our next monthly webinar will be in January at 11:30, same time, January 16th. And as I mentioned earlier, we're going to do a market update where we're going to take a look back at what happened in the markets in 2024. And then we'll just provide some education around some of the topical issues that are happening in the markets and the economy. So again, thank you for joining us. I hope you'll join us next month. And in the meantime, have a very happy holidays.
Happy holidays, everybody.